Everyone from the time we've come here to get started. First off, let me stand in your shouts. So, thank everyone who's here today for joining us. All of y'all want you to know that I'm not trying to make a fashion statement, Chris, for this hat, so I just need to explain this. I had surgery a couple weeks ago, and it was brain surgery. So I'm going to have to cover up this back part because I think some of you wouldn't have appreciated eating and looking at the back of my head, all right? So I just want you to know that. This is too important for me. Peter and I have been friends more than 30 years, and the Lord should have to be here for this today. I'm glad to be here for this. And I promise my wife that when we go home, we'll go straight to bed and take a lot of pain meditation, right? So it's going to work out. Such a blessing to see all of you here today. I see so many faces I recognize, and some of you who have been longtime friends with Reverend Johnson. Before we get started, just want to acknowledge some people here that are here today. I want to make sure Reverend Dr. Lucretia Face and also Pastor Andy, Reverend Dr. Stoker to stand, please. Pastor, that the reason I have to stand is that the two churches have come together, and we are involved in a race and reconciliation event that takes place the whole year. And we meet once a month. All of you, you're talking about some very difficult and challenging discussions that we've had between each other. And so I really want you here today to let you know that in the legacy of Reverend Johnson, there's some things taking place where people are talking about racism. They're talking about the isms that exist in our society. But not just talking about it, but praise be to Reverend Stokes and members of this church that their words are saying we need to do something about this. And there are others who are here with us today, so quickly on the rescue of this TV sample session, so I'm not going to TV sample today. I just want to recognize you. Thank you for being here today. Pastor Angel Williams serves on the staff at both churches. She's the bridge between us getting together. Well, that was a big and his wife. He is the executive director, president of the Thanksgiving Foundation. Thanksgiving Foundation. So thank you so much. And we're trying to, I'm really going to make, and once you make this work, I promise you to make this work. Also, we have to meet and bring God. Meet God. He's the artist. So when you say artist, he's the artist. One thing Peter's doing a lot of things is that he is involved in leading a legacy. And he is a visiting professor. He's a visiting lecturer at University of North Texas at Dallas. And he teaches on civil rights. He has two students out here today. So Kevin Hamilton and Elizabeth Gray, can you stand? It's such an honor to be a part of that. And I want to be sure to acknowledge the one who helps to stir the milk around us, Carlotta Kemp. Carlotta, so good seeing you. She keeps us organized, keeps us in place. She's always had to go celebrate here that we've given her the last 6 months. So I appreciate that. You'll see her soon, but we want to really take the time also in thanking Pam here, well, the two of her sons reiterated and run this place up. Pam, this was her idea. She don't want her chocolate secrets. She'll come after us, but she wanted to do this to acknowledge Reverend Johnson. She was paying for this herself. Everything else she wanted to outside, so she didn't know what you're waiting, but she's coming right now around the mountains. But she contacted me, she says, Don, I want to do something for Peter. She said, let me know what we can do, I will make it happen. And so we will have another event for Peter on February the 20th. It's coming similar to this one. And so anyone else you know that couldn't make it this time, please let us know, and we'll get it reserved for February the 20th at the same place, at the same time, right? And so I'm going to, before we come up, I want to acknowledge some very, very special people in the house. Peter's wonderful wife, and he's been with us for 40 years, Mr. Lawrence. What I appreciate about this house is that when Peter talks about it, she said, I married way up. Way up. Way up. Thank you so much. Also, we have Randy is here with us. Hello, Randy. Oh, there's Regis. Somebody say hello, Regis. There's some Regis here with us today. We have some grandchildren with us today. Just some grandchildren. Y'all stand up. We have grandchildren. There's also a great grandchild that's with us today. Great grandson. There he is. And all of you, let's please give a wonderful staff of Chocolate Secrets a wonderful applause for the great service. And also the Pelican House who serve the food, just really great and assisting us with that. So we're just so grateful for all that's happening. What can I say about Reverend Peter Johnson? We have been in his life for more than 30 years. I came on Peter because Reverend Johnson had worked with my father. My father was one of the pastors in the civil rights movement here in Texas. In fact, my father was one of the original pastors here in Texas who filed a lawsuit in Waco, Texas. And because we were in high school, junior high, and elementary school, He probably had all of us. And Waco is the only city in Texas to where all the schools were integrated on the same day because of the lawsuit that was filed there. And so at my father's funeral, Peter came and spoke. Peter told me about Father, I didn't know there were good things to be famous, so that's good. But Peter told me I know, and from there, our friendship began to blossom because of the legacy that is there. All of you, when you think of Peter Johnson, I need you to think of these things. When you're watching TV, you watch about Selma, Birmingham, March on Washington, he was there. When you hear the atrocities about the fire hoses, the dogs, the cattle problems, all that happened to Peter. Jailed more than 100 times, beaten more than 20 times. In fact, he still has some of the scars from those beatings that he took in those marches. Peter took a beating so bad one time that it broke his entire teeth in the front of his mouth. Why do I say that? Because years later, and like he says, I'm shedding tears, he had to be rushed to the hospital because remember the Lord said infection was going up in his face. And the Lord got him there in the time because they said if she had waited a little longer, we got to his brain and killed him. The infection was from a beating he took. Because all this was prepared through, so when it went up, it was nothing but like the infection going up in his face. People took beatings. People did things so that we can be in this room today. All of us can sit here today in the same room, celebrating the same vision. And that's Reverend Peter Johnson. Peter was the youngest member on the staff of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
And the best looking one.
Oh, but he has that also the most fire too. Yes, fire, yes. So, and we'll get into that, but he was, and so his experience started when he was 13 years old. In Black Louisiana, he brought some youth together there that were gang members. He convinced them to become members of the youth chapter in NAACP, where he's the president of that. And that started his time in the movement. When you speak of people in history, Peter can tell you personal stories. We tell about Rosa Parks, his personal friend. He can tell you about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and things he ever tell about Andrew Young. He can talk about Coretta Scott King. He can talk to you about Adam Clayton Powell III, the fourth. So many luminaries, when we talk about Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, you name them, Peter was right there with them. He would tell you about the wonderful fried chicken he ate around the table with Aretha Franklin that she cooked herself. He was there. His luminaries and his peers included John Lewis. That was one of his dear and wonderful friends. And so I want you to know that we do have a living legend among us. He won't tell you, he won't act that way, but he is.
All right.
He really is. And we're grateful for the life that he's lived. And that is what I can first tell you about that we've been part of protests, marches. You wouldn't see my picture out there, Kyle, because he kept in the background because I had to get him out of jail. So you wouldn't ever see me up front. But those things happen because he said, you know what, if there's someone who's struggling, someone who's hurting, someone who is going through something, he said, I need to be there to try to help. There's so many things that Peter does that we don't know anything about. A lot of children are in college right now because he got them out of prison or jail. Including the family of Peter Johnson. A lot of poor skeletons have jobs and own businesses because Peter didn't give up on them when they came out of prison. That was Peter Johnson, important of them. Amen. So I want to just say something about the man, about who he is and what he does. And even today, he really didn't want this. But we made him come here and receive us because, to give you a wonderful example what I'm talking about, oh, you mind me putting on the spot, Pam? Pam wanted to send his limousine to pick Peter up. He called me late and said, Don, I can't buy no limousine. They sent me a limousine for me to pick up. They said, I can't buy no limousine. But that's Peter. When I first got a nice car, we were going to pick up Martin Luther King III. Peter brought another car because he wanted to see me in my car. Because his mindset is that if people see me in that car, then they think I've sold out. I'm no longer a part of them. And that's what Peter is. And so when we talk these stories and we talk about the history, it's so broad and so wide and so high, but we're going to try to focus on Dallas. There's a lot that you don't know what happened in Dallas, and Peter was there. If you've read the commendation, I want you to know something right now. A lot of Peter's proven was not true because he was there. The gentleman wrote about what he heard. Peter can tell you about what he knows. There's a difference. He was there. And so, without further ado, Reverend Peter Johnson can come up on the stage and join me, please.
Thank you so much, Don. I really don't know where to start, but I think, the government used to have something when you got 18 years old called a draft. And so one of the things I want to do before I talk to you is draft somebody. Okay. Now, Ms. Cotton, I know you passed 18. Come here. Ms. Cotton, because I have certain just kind of insane behavior, you might sing to me. Yeah, she sure can sing too. You know, a lot of black people up in heaven when they were being made, that was a line to get talent. Some of y'all got in line more than once. I didn't get no talent. In fact, when I was growing up, my mama's best friend was over the choir in high school. And the choir got these maroon and gold and beautiful gowns. And they would have dark sunshade. They would be just singing and rocking. So I told Miss Clark, I want to be in the choir. So she said, well, you got to try it out. So when I tried out, she said, well, baby, let me tell you, because Evelyn is my best friend, we're going to let you be in the choir and give you a role. Move your mouth, but don't sing. Sometimes you would be singing gospel tunes that I really love, and I would get carried away and start singing. The young man standing next to me, Edward Earl was his name, we called him Popeye. He would put his hand up and say, Miss Carter, feet are singing. So I had to hit him in the mouth one day. But I do want to take a minute. Would you please sing a song for me? And you know what one I want? Please. Welcome, Miss Cotton. God bless you all.
Hello, everybody. I want to help somebody to see the light today. I want to lend a helping hand to show someone the way. I want my life to be an example as I go, for I may never pass this way again. I want to be a worthy vessel of God's redeeming love, and I'll give glory and all praise to God above. Let me be a blessing while I have a chance. I may never pass this way again. Make me worthy of your love, your
That's what I'm talking about. Some people got a lot. I should have got some of that tech. Pam, you never know how special it is to do this. And how much I love you and your sons. That is going to be an execution at the penitentiary in Central Texas. And because of my age, I don't do too much driving in long distances. So Pam will ride her young son home to go to the gates of that penitentiary with me to pick him. And I am eternally grateful that you would let that happen. And he also went, I think, to Little Rock and a couple other places with me. Trying to take a look at how can we continue to work by handing the ball to the next generation and giving them some of the things that Martin King and Adam Powell gave to my generation. This is going to be very, very difficult and painful for me. I can preach about that history, make speeches about that history, but it's very painful for me to talk about. And my great-grandson, it has been no hurry up. I came to Dallas in 1969, and people asked me, how did you come to Dallas? I said, reluctantly. I did not want to come here. Dallas had a reputation in the civil rights movement, a very difficult reputation. Dallas is the only city where the black community asked Dr. King not to come. Dallas is the only city where the Negro preachers met Martin King at Love Field at the airport and asked him to get back on the plane. They didn't want him here. So when I came here with that bitter, ugly history embedded in my heart. I saw Martin King cry a number of times. One of the things I saw him weep about was Dallas. Yeah. So this is special to me, and I want y'all to bear with me as I struggle to try to talk about some of this history. Don, you can ask me any questions except math questions.
Peter, let's set the backdrop to how you got to Dallas. Let's go back to 1968. You had been with Dr. King several days earlier, you ended up in Harlem, and you were there at the regional office. Who was someone that was very special in Harlem that people don't realize was part of SCLC at one time?
Watch this. The director of the Harlem office was Maya Angelou. And what I can tell you about Maya Angelou, at that time she had big legs. She was a dancer. But you know, Maya kind of took the young men in the civil rights movement about as serious as you would take a joke. When I got the news that Dr. King had been shot, I was in Harlem. And that painful day, the news was Martin had been shot, and he was trying to get to Coretta before she heard it on the news. But the call that I got, Martin was dead. Come on back to the South. For me, my greatest fear that day was to get back to my home state, to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where Southern University is the school I went to school. Because I knew that when the news hit that campus, a touch of bloodshed of my home people. Going to Memphis, I flew home to Baton Rouge to walk those streets and try to talk to students at Southern, because at that time we had had students killed at Southern, we had had students killed at Jackson State, so we knew, I knew, because I knew the kind of radical students that was there saying that if I didn't get back to Baton Rouge, the streets was gonna be bloody. So when I left Manhattan that day, instead of going to Memphis, I flew to Baton Rouge. And Dr. Walter Young, who's still alive, was Andrew Young's youngest brother. We call him Hippie. Hippie and I walked those streets that day and that night, begging people not to ride. And from Baton Rouge the next day, we flew to Memphis. And all I can do is tell you all, I can't begin to explain how difficult and painful those days was for a young man.
Because we had talked about that in the past. You mentioned to me one night you were sitting in your room and you thought about a moment of laughter with Dr. King and others. And that was about the saints and the sinners. Can you kind of tell us about what the saints and the sinners was about? And the fact that you were always a sinner.
Oh, absolutely. But inside of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Dr. King's organization, there were young men, middle-aged men, and elderly men. So we would play. First, Martin Luther King was a hell of an athlete. You would be surprised. Basketball, he could go with both hands left or right. Quick as you ever want. I mean, he was a tremendous athlete. So, and could dunk. So we would staff up into the sinners and the saints. Martin and them were the saints. We were the saints and the sinners. And of course, so we would be, the basketball game would be who was going to clean up and wash the dishes. And of course, we also would play softball. And Dr. King pitched. And when I say pitch, softball, I don't know how much y'all know about softball, but he pitched like this. Zoom, and the ball turned down, it's done. So, one of the things I like to talk about Martin King is what kind of athlete he was and how shocking athletic abilities that Dr. King had. And if you can imagine a softball game or basketball game with Peter Johnson, Jesse Jackson, John Lewis, all of us young men. And we're playing against Martin King, Andrew Young, Jose Williams, James Owens, and so it was just, and of course, every time somebody got angry and cursed, Dr. King said, give me the ball, give me the ball. Go sit down. So I got to sit down a lot.
The tide had turned in the United States. Tension had settled, but you were called to come back to Atlanta because there was something that it was felt that the staff had to do to help correct Scott King.
Dr. King, and no life insurance. Nobody would sell life insurance to him. So when we were all summoned to Atlanta after we buried Martin, the summons came from Parallel 5 days in the 48. They said, y'all come home, we need to talk to you. So we made a Towson hotel. And a Jewish man named Samuel Livingston, Samuel, we call him Samuel Boy. Samuel was a Jewish big-time Hollywood director and producer. So Samuel Livingston and Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte had come up with an idea to help correct it. And the idea was they were going to take Martin's life. That was all of these news footage of Dr. King's life and make a documentary. And we could take the documentary and raise money for Mrs. King to raise Martin's babies. And we met at Pascal's in Atlanta. And we all agreed 100% to entrust Harry and Sidney and Sammy Boy, Samuel Livingston, to develop this documentary on Dr. King's life. And it took them a couple of months to develop it. Once the movie was ready, we were summoned back to Atlanta to view the movie. And the movie was gonna premiere in 800 cities around the world. So we met at Ebenezer, Dr. King's old church. I remember these events just like it was yesterday. We met at Ebenezer to discuss how we were gonna organize this premiere showing around the world of Martin's movie. So Andy and Papa King up in front of us, talking about what cities and what states and et cetera around the world people are gonna go. So I'm at the back of the church with the young men, and we do what young people do, cutting up, making noise. And Ralph Abernathy eventually said, you know, Peter, you go sit over there. Jesse, you get up and go sit over here. Junior, y'all go, it just separated us from cutting up and clowning and making noise. So when I put my hand up, I was volunteered to go to Hawaii or the Virgin Islands to organize. It seemed like a good idea at the time. All of that was up on the blackboard. All of the places where the staff was gonna go. So I said, well, I know where I wanna go. Send me to either the Virgin Islands or Honolulu. And then his son said, Ralph Abernathy told us you're going to Texas, Peter. And because I'll appeal that decision. And it was told, pack your stuff, here's your ticket, go to Dallas.
Now, Peter, as you tell that story, one thing that sits out in that time is that normally the way that SCLC staff work is that they go to the airport, they call the cab will come up, they say, I'm with SCLC, they jump in, they want to be charged. But this was something strange happened was that
Because I was coming to Dallas, Andy drove me from Auburn Avenue, our office, national headquarters, to the airport in Atlanta. And the whole time from the airport, from the office to the Atlanta airport, a word wasn't spoken. Silence. When we got to the airport, getting my luggage out of the trunk, Andy took me and hugged me and said, Peter, they killed the president in Dallas. Peter, don't go down there and piss them people off and you kill them. Do your assignment. Dallas was chosen because of love Peter. I was going to be running all over the Southwest to organize the premiere showing of this movie. But Dallas had the best airport to run around the Southwest at that time. My orders was, don't do anything in Dallas. Do your assignment. Don't even go into the black community in Dallas. Stay in the World Council of Churches, the World Council of Churches used to own hotels all over the world. When we would travel, we could stay at those hotels free. So I was staying at a hotel in downtown Dallas with orders from Andy, my boss at that time, not to even go into the black community. And please, now let me give you an explanation why. Because of the way the Negro community treated Dr. King, the civil rights movement didn't want to do nothing to help the black community in Dallas. Yeah.
Now, Peter, you jump on the airplane and get here, you're expecting a homeboy from Louisiana to pick you up, but something strange happened at the airport because there was more than just him there waiting for you. Who else was at the airport at the time?
When I got off the plane to Love People, I was greeted by people that I knew. Some of them had gone to Southern University with me. Albert Lipscomb, who was a waiter at that time, met me at the airport. He was a waiter, you know. Of course, George Holland, who would eventually become a member of my staff. George Holland was the son of William Holland. William Holland was the first Negro to get elected to the school board in Houston, Texas. One of our friends down in Houston, George was his son. George worked for the Black Hair Care Product Company out of Chicago, which was a big financial supporter of Martin King and people like me. So George Holland, Albert Lipscomb, Elsa Higgins, and J.B. Jackson met me at the airport. That's how I met them. They met me at the airport, begging me to help them with something called the Fowl Park homeowners. And I explained to them, listen, I'm on strict orders. I'm not supposed to do nothing to piss these people off down here. I'm going to my hotel. I got to get this movie organized in Houston and all over the Southwest, so I'm busy. 2 nights later, they came to the hotel. And they brought some of the Fowl Park homeowners with them. One man named was Mr. Gideon Johnson. Mr. Gideon Johnson was one of the homeowners in Fowl Park. He was an elderly man who had fought in World War II. And when I explained to Mr. Johnson, I wish I could help y'all, but I'm on the orders not to get involved. He shook his finger in my face and he told me Dr. King was alive. Yeah. They'd taken our homes and he cried. And I knew then that I was going to get fired. I got to help these people. I can't ignore this. So that's one of the reasons I eventually would get involved in this city.
Peter, that took place, but something strange also happens that you came here with the knowledge of knowing that you're over the Southwest states, no problems in Houston, San Antonio, New Orleans.
Nowhere in the world going, listen, the movie was going to premiere, if I remember correctly, maybe in October, in 800 cities around the world. 799 cities on this earth welcome the movie of Martin King's life. Only one city on the earth said, and this is their words to my face, that nigga movie ain't gonna be shown in this city. Now, if that wouldn't have happened to me, I wouldn't be here today. But I was so angry because Martin King was, to the young men on the staff, Dr. King was a prophet from heaven to us. So for these white people to tell me that nigga's movie ain't gonna be shown in this city, I say like hell it is. And I told Ralph Abernathy, what we're gonna do, we're gonna run a house in South Dallas, get some sheets and hang it on the outside of the house. And we're gonna show the movie free in Dallas on the side of a house. But we will show Martin's movie in this city.
Peter, there came a point to where you met with a group of men, and I love when you say that you met. They were the whitest men with the whitest shirts.
Yeah, because I got invited to this meeting that the Council of Churches set up. I had Park Cities Baptist Church, if I remember correctly. Pastor's name was Dr. Herbert Howard. So I met, and I went to this meeting to talk about getting theaters for Martin's movie. And everywhere I went, I would take a bodyguard with me, our own bodyguard with me. So when we got to this church to meet with these people, they wanted George Holland, Mr. Holland, who had 2 pistols with him, to not come in with the guns. And of course, that was a great discussion we had to do in the church. And eventually I agreed against George's will. George put the damn guns back in the trunk and went into this meeting. And what I remember about this meeting, these were all rich white people. H.L. Klein, all the rich, Tom Crow, all the rich guys. Eric Johnson, who was the mayor at that time. And I had a love affair with crisp white shirts, dress shirts. I've always, as a preacher, loved these really expensive looking. And they had the nicest white shirts I'd ever seen. And the white skin. So, in me, I wanted to know where y'all got them shirts from. They told me that these are the rich white people, that if you could let us see the movie first, Then we can decide whether or not we can let it be shown in dollars. As in first place, I don't have that kind of control. The only person that has control over this move is correct. And that ain't gonna happen. But there is a promotional version of about 25 minutes of the movie, I think 3 hours. When we showed the movie, she had for it, then there's a recess, and then people go eat and use the bathroom, come back and sit down. It was a long, drawn out movie on Martin's life. But I did have this little 30-minute version, but I didn't have it at the time. It wasn't the one copy, and that copy was up at Abyssinia, which was at Howard's church. So that little, so I had to get, that was an airline here called Granite, Alabama.
Yeah.
And I knew a Jewish pilot who flew from Love Field to Idlewild. I think they did. It was called Idlewild, and that was the New York airport. That's this boy flew back and forth. So I talked, and he said, "Well, Peter, I can bring it back down here, but I ain't going to Harlem." And I said, "Well, I would get somebody to bring it to the airport, and he would bring it down." And so that day, I got to move in my hand. And as I tell these stories, what I'd like for y'all to consider is God's divine hand in this here. And don't look at this, that something that I've done that I was sleeping, I was smart enough to do this. This is what I call divine intervention. You know, the fact that me and this pilot was friends, that Brandon had this flight every day into Manhattan. I mean, all of this is coming divine to me. And I was able to get the movie the same day. And have this meeting again out at Park City Baptist Church with these rich white men with this 30-minute version of the movie. What I remember about that day, I was very, very uncomfortable with that day because first thing that happened again, George couldn't bring his guns in the church. So we had to go in this church, turn all the lights out to show this 30-minute version. Sitting behind me was all these white men. And the whole time, I keep looking back. A white man named Jack Lowe Sr. came and sat next to me and put his arms around me. He said, "You don't need to be uncomfortable. Ain't nobody gonna touch you." Jack is dead now, but I'm still feeling his son, Jack Jr. But it was Jack Lowe who came that day in that church and put his arms around me and said, "I will sit next to you. Anybody gonna touch you in this church. You need not be worried."
Peter, there was still a movement for it not to be shown, but you had to make some phone calls to Hollywood and other places to have some things happen outside of that take place.
Well, the people who own the theaters here were still saying no. And because we were having all kinds of problems because of that. And so we had talked to Samuel about it. So with Samuel Livingston and the people in Hollywood, our friends of mine, they went to the movie distributors and they sent a message to all of the theater owners in Dallas: "You will not get another damn new movie out of Hollywood unless Rodgers' movie is shown." So the next day, in my office, which is on Forest Avenue, which is Martin Luther King Boulevard now, here again, I have no control over this movie. It's going to premiere on this day. We got less than 3 days to put tickets on sale, promote the movie, sell the tickets. Each staff member had an X amount of dollars to raise. We had a goal. We want to raise this amount of money for Mrs. King. She wants to build something called a King Suit. Each one of us is responsible for raising a certain amount of money to reach this amount. Now, for me, being the youngest man on the staff, probably the most vulgar-mouthed man on the staff, the biggest troublemaker, that was always, I'm trying to think of what it says, with the older men. Questions about, well, Peter is too volatile, that's the word he was used. You can't trust people to go down there, cuss everybody out. You know, so for me not to raise my money, I would have to face Jesse and all the other people saying, well, we told y'all you're too young and silly and reactionary. So for me, my financial goal was more than just raising the money. It had to do with my respect on Martin King staff at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, because I was still seen as a young, wild, irrational, and I was trying to mature, at least make them think I had matured. So I was really, the movie in Houston and Austin and Oklahoma City and Tulsa, all in New Orleans and Shreveport, nowhere else was having this problem. But once I got this, but the movie's gonna premiere in 2 days. I'm in my office that night with my staff, and we're trying to figure out what to do about Dallas, Texas. I had some friends down here who were football players. Amos Marsh was one. Frank Clark was one. Patty's known, Patty still is. One of the things about growing up in the Black South, everything was segregated. If you went to a black high school, everybody knew everybody, all over the South. If you was a great track star in Alabama or Georgia or South Carolina, we knew who you were. If you was a great basketball player or a great football, so we all knew each other. So I knew them from desegregated kids, really from high school. That night in my office, Brenda Demons, who was my secretary, she comes, she says, there's a white man want to talk to you, and he brought Frank Clark with him. I said, well, Frank wouldn't bring somebody to see me there, but search him anyway. So when he brought this man in, and Frank Clark hugged me, he said, Peter, I want you to listen and don't curse this man. The man's name was Peter McGuire. So this man, first I didn't like the fact that he came to my office, he had his collar turned up, he had on dark sunshades, and he was walking like he was black. And I was kind of offended by it. And he was walking up and down in front of my desk, like he was Jive Black walking. And he was explaining to me, and Franklin already told me, don't see none, just listen to you. So he says, what I want to do for you, I want to pay for seats for all of the theaters, and everybody can come see it free. And I want to buy buses, I want to hire buses to bring all the whole community and all over Dallas to see this movie. And I'm thinking, because he got his checkbook out now, and my idea is, first place, don't nobody keep that kind of money in a checking account. And so I told my bodyguard, lock the damn door, don't let him out. And if he's playing with me, we're gonna make him jump out his window. So it was Republic Bank. So I call this bank and see if this is a good check. So they got somebody on the phone from Republic Bank, and I said, I want to see it, I have a check, and I want to see if it's a good check. He said, well, who wrote you the check? I said, somebody named Peter McGuire. He said, oh, it's a good check, but I ain't told him how much it is. I said, but he said, well, if Mr. McGuire gave you a check, it's a good check. And nothing wrong with that check. So Peter ended up not only making the movie free, but giving us enough money to buy advertising on all the Negro radio stations, and to charter buses to go all over from West Dallas to East Dallas to all over the black community and bus people to see Martin's movie. Here again, divine intervention. God coming in to man's life.
Peter, the movie is shown thank you, sir, it's a success. And you're cold, and your good friend Ralph Already says, Peter, come home, but
I want to come on the next day.
but something happened.
Send the money to Atlanta. Get on the airplane. Get back to Atlanta. you're going to, what is it, North or South Carolina in a couple of days. I don't remember, somewhere in the Carolinas. That was my next assignment. So when Ralph and Andrew Reuter realized that we had raised all of the money in the Southwest, my job was to get on the next plane that next day and get my butt back into Atlanta to go to the Carolinas. And you got to realize during that time in history, wasn't no beepers, wasn't no cell phones. So if I didn't want to talk to them, I just didn't return their phone calls. So you know how I found out I was fired? I was listening to the Negro radio station a couple of days later, and a bulletin came on. Reverend Peter Johnson has been fired by Reverend Andrew Young. What, getting fired was not a new experience for me. I got fired 3 or 4 times a year, but I always had an ace in the hole there, correct? You know, all they did was go cry. And Mrs. King would go explain to me, Peter's young, his father too.
Well, Peter, you received that information, you decided to stay in Dallas because your heart was touched by these members from the Fair Park Association. What took place there? What made you stay?
Well, I knew I could help them if I would stay here, and if they would accept the concept of nonviolence, which is also tied to something that we call agape, that you got to learn to love the man who treats you wrong. And if you do, you can change his heart. But I knew that if I would stay, I had my partners here. I had Amos Marsh was here, Dennis Lawrence was here, Frank Clark was here. So I had some good partners here. I had a boy here playing with the Dallas Chaparral who had gone to college with me. So I had some good, solid people here that I knew I could depend on. And of course, like I said, George Holland was here, Mr. Holland's son, and there were a number of other people that I knew here, and that I think I could stay here. And I wanted to teach this city a lesson, and a nonviolent lesson, but I wanted to teach them a lesson. So and they fired me, I just went to Coretta. And told Coretta, make him let me stay 4 months. I need 4 months to do what I need to do. And this is November now. And what I knew about the city of Dallas was very, very, very sensitive to its national image because of John Kennedy.
Right.
So I figured I could force Dallas to capitulate because they're not going to want me to embarrass them nationally because of John Kennedy. And I knew they had something coming called a Cotton Bowl Parade.
Peter, before we get to the Cotton Bowl Parade, just briefly talking about what was the issue in Fair Park, because you knew that you couldn't stop the city from one thing, but you knew something about fair and equitable sales of those houses. And what was it that you discovered that you was able to take from the court on?
Well, what the city was doing, and they're still doing it, it's called eminent domain. See, eminent domain is the government can take your house. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And the government can take your house and tell you what it was worth. So these poor homeowners, most of them had bought their homes through the GI Bill for World War II. And the city had condemned their homes and was literally taking their homes. One of the things Martin King taught us and me is Dr. King said, before you get into a fight, you go take a reading on it. What he meant by that, you study it. You study it, you research it. You ought to know more about it than anybody else know about it. You ought to know the strong, the weak. You ought to know everything about it. So we put together a research committee to take a serious look at where Dallas was on. The research committee was headed by a tall, lanky, blonde-headed white girl from Northern California who had gone to school in Berkeley that we knew she had come out of the anti-war movement, Caroline Blackburn. And Caroline had a doctor's degree, if I remember correctly, in sociology, I think, she was a social worker at the University of California. So we put together this research committee to take a real look at the Fowl Park homeowners. What we found was, if you was a black homeowner and said your home was at 1402 3rd Avenue, you were buying your house. Next door to your house was a black family renting, said 1404. They was renting, same house, same lot, 50 by 100, same wood frame, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, same little house. This house that the black family owned, this property, according to the city of Dallas, was worth 50 cents a square foot. This house next door that the black family was renting, owned by a family from Highland Park, was worth $2 a square foot. Same damn house. So I knew we had them. We're not gonna fight them about in the domain. We're gonna fight them about fair market value.
Right.
This we can win. And we're not gonna fool with Dallas courts. Let's go to the Fifth Circuit. At that time, the Fifth Circuit was one of the most liberal courts in the South.
You ready to go?
Oh yeah, and I'm from South Louisiana, so we knew where to go and where to go. But time was running out. And I had suggested to the homeowners that you ought to ask the mayor to meet with you all. And the legal leaders told me, nowhere in the world, Mr. Peter Johnson, one of the richest men in Texas, will ever come and meet with us. And my deal was, you have to send him a proper invitation. We're going to invite him and he'll come. So what I done then, knowing that we're going to get into a fight down here, in the civil rights movement with the young people, we had something called Got My Five. So all over the nation, I got my partners, and I sent them something called a mailogram. They basically said, hey, come to Dallas and go to jail with me on New Year's Day. That's all they telegrams. They poured into Dallas from all over America with their long hair. I'm talking about his partners with their, hey, and when I say poured into Dallas, they poured into Dallas. So one of the things I knew, I had enough of them here to stop the Cotton Bowl Parade if I wanted to do that. Because my partners was here. I mean, they came from the far west, the Carolinas, from the San Francisco area, from all over America. All of these anti-war hippie white kids that had worked with us in Mississippi and Alabama. And because we had this thing among ourselves that we need each other, and we would already respond to a call from help from one of us. So they came when I sent them.
Peter, they arrive here, you make your wishes known, but you were there at the church across from the Dallas Weekly newspaper right now, that Presbyterian church, and you were there in the basement and something happened that night.
It was a Lutheran church at that time. It was Mennonite Lutheran, and it was really, again, divine intervention. Mennonite Lutheran was pastored by a white man from Germany, a German white man named Mark Herbner. Mark Herbner was probably one of the most liberal, committed white men you ever want to meet. I mean, tough as nails, and just a wonderful, wonderful. So we met in the basement of Mark's church. We met in the basement of his church. This is New Year's Eve. I got all the Falcon homeowners and their families in the basement of that church. And we sent the mayor a telegram. No, it was called a mailogram at night. Basically telling the mayor, you got till midnight to meet with the Fowl Park homeowners, or we're gonna block the Cotton Bowl Parade. And I know we could do it because my partners are here. So we in the basement of Mark Kirkland's church singing freedom songs and crying. And telephone rang in the church, and Mark Kirkland said, Peter, you ain't gonna believe this, the mayor's on the phone. So we said, Mr. Mayor, thank you for calling. And he said, well, I'm at my New Year's Eve party. I said, well, I'm at a party too. And he says, if you come down to my office, I will leave my party and meet with you. I said, Mr. Mayor, I don't have no property or no house y'all take it. If you want to meet, you're going to have to meet with the Fair Park homeowners. I'm going to block that damn parade in the morning. And hung the phone up in Mr. Mayor's face. A few minutes later, he calls back. And he says, if you agree not to block the parade, I'll meet with anybody you send to my office. So I got up on a table in the basement of Mark's church, and I said, y'all need to choose your own leaders and your own spokesmen. They chose Albert Lipscomb, J.B. Jackson, Elsa Faye Higgins, Mr. Gideon Johnson. Mr. Gideon Johnson was the man who shook his finger in my face.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the black cab company, but it was owned by a wonderful, wonderful black man who sent the cabs to get us, to take us to the mayor's office. When we got to the mayor's office, got down the hall, we stopped and prayed. And I told them, I said, look, I want y'all to look me in my eyes. See how they look at me in the eyes? That's how you talk to this white man. Look his ass in his eyes. Don't blink, don't smile. Well, Reverend, no, I'm not coming. Stand up for yourself. Straighten up your back, and he'll fall off. You see, I said, no, I don't need to talk to him. Y'all need to talk to him. And look at me, don't look at your shoes. Look him in your eyes, and don't back down.
The mayor met with him when something happened to you, was that you got a phone call. And you couldn't get with him the next day. What happened that night after you got that phone call?
Shit, man, I told you to get the hell out of town. When we got back to the church, oh, we crying, we singing, we hugging. It's a divine incident for us. We get back to the basement of the church. It's maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. It's New Year's Day. So a part of what I had to do was call Dr. Albert and tell him what I had done. And everybody was safe. There was no bloodshed. Nobody's in jail. So I called Ralph in his house. Wake him up. And I told him, Dr. Albert, everything was fine. The mayor met with him. They explained to him everything. There was no bloodshed, et cetera, so I don't need to block the parade in the morning. Ralph said, you made that man meet? I said, yes, sir. Peter, when you put the phone down, get the hell out of Texas. I said, no. He said, no. He said, you call Popeye. Popeye was my cab driver. The black cab company gave me a cab and a cab drive anywhere I wanted to go. So when I hung up, Ralph said, now, Peter, when you get, he said, you go to Shreveport, go to the Holiday Inn, there'll be a room waiting for you. But get the hell out of Dallas. I don't want you to wake up in Dallas. You get out of Dallas. So called the black cab company, and Popeye drove me all the way to the Holiday Inn in Shreveport. So that next morning, by the time I got up that next morning and turned the television on, it's in the middle of the Cotton Bowl parade. One of the things I had told the Fair Park homeowners to let the mayor know that the segregated parades in this city is over. There will be no more segregated parades. And you tell him, although he didn't meet with you all, if the parade is not integrated, I'll still block it. There must be black people in that parade. So when I got up that morning and turned the television on, it was Sam Donaldson. And so I knew how to do it. In fact, Sam had been in the basement at church that night before. And they was talking about the